Well, are you guys ready for some popcorn? Right now, as we speak, there is a live streamed event going on of the Sunrise Movement. They are essentially a Green New Deal movement of young people that literally think the world is going to end in 12 years. Yes, they are the cultists that are following AOC and all those mindless climate alarmists that literally think, okay, if we don't get rid of hot dogs, if we don't get rid of vehicles, if we don't get rid of cows because of cow farts, that in 12 years, the world is going to end. So here's what we are going to do today. We are going to be popping in and out of a live stream feed of this event at the Sunrise Movement in DC, where AOC and Bernie Sanders are going to be speaking to this young group of people. Now, many of the people who are in the Sunrise Movement are young people, just turned 18, some of them still in high school right now, but might be eligible to vote in 2020. So they're essentially preying on young people in their naivety and ignorance and fear-mongering with them to make them think that they need to vote for the Democrats because they're the only ones who are going to push these Green Party, green environmentalism policies, which we all know actually means they're actually pushing big government. They're actually whittling away our rights as they're implementing these green policies. So let's pop in a little bit into the feed from this event here with the Sunrise Movement and just check in to see what they're doing. It looks like so far Bernie Sanders and AOC have not yet come out on stage, but they've been playing a lot of little propaganda pieces about how climate change and all of these things are causing minority people to have horrible lives, and they had a moment of silence for the colonization that happened for the people that were living in this area. It was pretty ridiculous. So we're on an intermission right now, and it looks like it's just now coming back. The Green New Deal is coming back into the feed. So we'll pop over to there in a minute when we see AOC come on the stage. But I just want to say, guys, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a background into why we're seeing this massive push, this massive young people push for environmentalism and Green New Deal policies. Well, here's what's been happening. We've all heard about the LGBTQ propaganda indoctrination that's been happening to our young children in schools, where you have these schools implementing curriculum where kids have to learn about homosexual relationships, and they have to learn about people of other identities and transgenderism. But what we don't hear as much, because it's not as sensational, is that a lot of young people are also and have been being indoctrinated with environmental curriculum, which is essentially Green Party politics with Green Party policies, and it has many communist ideals and policies tied in and meshed into this environmental curriculum. So essentially, we're allowing our youth, our children, to be indoctrinated with a political party's ideology, that being the Green Party. And we have communism, which is right behind the Green Party's ideals. We know that communism, the Green Party is just essentially communism rebranded. So would we allow a conservative environment or conservative curriculum in schools, or a Republican curriculum in schools, or a Democrat curriculum in schools? We would never allow that, because that's indoctrinating our young children. And that's what we're doing essentially with this Green Party. And now we are seeing the consequences. We're seeing a bunch of young people terrified because they've been told since they're little kids that the world is going to end, the earth is going to die, all of these natural disasters are going to happen. You know, you've seen all these Hollywood movies where these tsunamis come and all this terrible things happen. They think that's going to happen in 12 years, essentially. So that's what we're seeing here. We're seeing that these young people, all in this crowd, who are literally waiting for AOC and Bernie Sanders to come on out on stage. They are waiting here to see if these politicians are going to push policies that make them feel appeased and at ease, to make them think that they're safe because they've been being indoctrinated since they were little kids. It's sick, okay? It's sick. It's a little bit, in some ways, comedy to watch these people that are really panicking, thinking the world's going to end because of cow farts, but at the same time, it's sad. It's really sad.
Biodiversity. Our future. Thanks, Havana.
So yeah, this girl, the main speaker, the host of this event, essentially, she comes out in the beginning and tells everyone, let's have a moment of silence for the people that were here before because, you know, white colonization came in and took away their home. So let's have a moment of silence for them. And you need to check your privilege. I mean, they've got all this, SJW propaganda intertwined within the mix.
Wow, thank you, everybody.
But they also have the climate alarmist propaganda here, and that's where it gets serious. You know, they really think, okay, we have to save the earth here.
When we talk about the Green New Deal, we're really discussing a plan that's at the intersection of climate, race, and the economy. And there is no person I trust better to talk about all of that than our next speaker, Judith Howell. Judith grew up in the civil rights movement in New York City. She works as a security officer in a commercial office building in Washington, D.C., where she is a member of the Service Employees International Union 32BJ Local.
And they've got about 1,000.3, 1,300 people watching their feed right now.
Executive Board of SEIU 32BJ. Please give a very warm welcome to Judith.
So what they've been doing so far is they've been telling stories that reinforce the indoctrination that these people are suffering. All of these minorities, all these ethnic groups in America and other countries are suffering because of industrialization that primarily white colonialists have started.
Shout out to all my security officers in here.
Come on, get to the point, guys. What's going on? Is AOC running late? Bernie Sanders running late? We saw that with a lot of Hillary Clinton events.
And let them know that those of us that work in private commercial real estate, we got your back. Good evening. As you know, and thank you, Arshini. My name is Judith Howell, and as a night shift security officer, my duties include keeping multi-million-dollar office buildings safe. Now, each building is a mini environment with a plethora of issues that can waste money, affect profits, hurt tenants and their employees, and the business operations. And in my 16 years, I've seen firsthand the damage that can occur from wear and tear, lax surveillance, poor construction, improper waste, improper chemical storage, fire, and water. Water leaks. I am a proud member of 32BJ, of the Service Employees International Union, SEIU.
So remember, what's behind that is pushing for more government regulations on businesses that's going to shut down industry in our country.
About our larger environment, planet Earth. It's our spaceship. This is it, okay? The fight for climate justice is critically important to my union. We believe that working people can and must be a part of the process of reversing climate change.
There aren't going to be working people if you push in all these regulations in the name of climate change
Climate
and run business
advocacy
away.
is not new for us. 32BJ is a part of the People's Climate Movement. We're also a longtime member of the Blue-Green Alliance. And my union has an award-winning Green Supers training program. And if you don't know what a super is, you didn't grow up in New York City like I did. We also
New
are
York
currently
City that now
working
is
with
banning
allies
hot dogs.
to pass green building legislation in New York City. That's because the building owners there don't want to see the water rise and take away their properties, right? Yeah. My union understands that without this ambitious goal, the Green New Deal, the political will won't exist to force corporations to change their behavior.
Meanwhile,
Big
they're
oil,
helping
big
push.
coal, gas frackers and their lobbyists scare their workers into believing that change will ruin their livelihoods and take their jobs.
Okay, let's pause this for a second. Big oil and big wind are the same. You can't even imagine how many of these green energy companies I've looked into, and it turns out they also own coal and oil. I mean, they own it all. So by helping the big green wind turbine companies, you're also helping the coal and the oil. It's all the same.
Pollutants that contribute to climate change, who are the least equipped to deal with bad air, increased heat waves, and rising sea levels. But folks, the greedy never care about the needy.
Rising heat waves. Okay, that's funny because it's been really cold out here in Ohio on the East Coast lately.
That it would take $1 billion to launch.
She must live in California or
Both
Arizona.
Musk and Bezos got private corporation missiles that only take $68 million to launch. God knows how much we've spent on this missile. And the Republican senator from that area says, oh, but our jobs. Take the billion and the 68 million and create some jobs in solar, in wind, in water.
Wind does not create jobs. Wind does not create jobs. I can't tell you this. It's insane how many times people say this, and it's absolutely not true. The wind turbines just sit there and turn. You have a couple people go out and maintenance them every once in a while, but we'll get into the bad efficiency behind the wind turbines and how they don't actually make barely any energy and aren't really environmentally friendly. 900,000 bats killed annually by these wind turbines. Around 300,000 raptor birds killed annually by these wind turbines. But they don't want to talk about that because big green fascist corporations are actually behind these groups and behind them. See, they're okay with fascism and big corporations when it's behind their policies they like, but then they point it out on the right if it's coal or something like that, or steel.
The county and city councils, individuals committed to change our energy sourcing from fossil fuels and these other methods that are destroying our planet to clean energy ones. Solar, wind, water, steam. Do it now, later will be too late.
You mean like how solar panels actually create a lot of highly toxic chemicals in the process of their manufacture? Is that clean?
Argue and debate this issue. That is a tactical diversion we don't have time for. It is a designed waste of time, energy, and focus. And I learned the importance of focus in part from the movie Mad Max 2, Thunderdome. It's the theme song. And I want you to think about the
I wonder
conditions
how much these
we're
people are
living
being
in
paid
this
by
world
big
right
wind.
now. Conditions we're living in this country right now. And I quote, "We don't need another hero. We don't need to know the way home." It's underwater anyway. All we need is what's beyond Thunderdome. Brothers and sisters, fellow human beings, HUE-men beings, fossil fuels and the environment-destroying agricultural and manufacturing techniques are our Thunderdome.
The environment isn't destroying manufacture and agriculture techniques. The EPA's regulations, now they're destroying the agricultural and industrial efficiency, essentially.
I have no doubt our planet will respond. It will begin to heal itself. And this struggle will heal us. It'll heal our bodies. It'll heal our mindsets. It'll heal our societies. It will heal our focus. And give
Our
us a
planet
beautiful
has been
spaceship
having ice ages
generations to come.
and warming periods since the very beginning of time. You can look through it. We've had warm periods and ice ages, warm periods and ice ages. What they're actually talking about is let's terraform to try to prevent these natural cycles that the Earth goes through and has been going through for a very long time. You can't stop it. It's going to, we're naturally going to have warmer periods and colder periods.
Judith, is Judith still back there?
And no, we didn't have man-made industrialization back when we had ice ages and warming periods and the middle, the warming period that happened during the medieval times. We didn't have industrialization back then. So these things happen naturally on their own. It's called solar cycles. Look it up, solar cycles.
So as Carrie grounded us in the beginning, this fight is national, but it's got to start and be led by local. And with that, I want to introduce Jeremiah Lowry to the stage.
Now, I promise
don't have to
you, they
introduce
have
Jeremiah
advertised
Lowry.
this event to be having
Jeremiah-
AOC come speak and Bernie Sanders come speak. So it looks like we're getting through all their little people first that are part of their Sunrise movement.
Ban the box and raising the minimum wage. He's also passionate about climate and sits on the board of the DC Sierra Club. And Jeremiah ran for DC Council at large in the 2018 primary election. So give it up for Jeremiah.
Oh my goodness. Can we quickly give another round of applause for Judith? I thought that was absolutely amazing.
Unbelievable. I can't imagine what AOC is going to come out and say, because she always tends to put her foot in her mouth and just say the most ridiculous things. I can't wait to see AOC come out here and just tell us the world's going to end if we don't get rid of cow farts. Let's hear it.
She's been putting in the work. She's a beautiful human being, and I just want to really give more recognition to Judith and the work that she's done on the front lines for the climate change movement over the past few years. So one more round of applause for
I think
Judith.
12 years from now, we should hold a big end of the world party. We should hold like a big Y2K end of the world party and put up all these, these quotes and these video clips of AOC and Beto and Bernie Sanders and all these Democrats that touted that the world's going to end. And we'll just hold a big party, and then we'll wait. We'll count down the clock. 12 years. All right, let's see. Is the world going to end? And I guarantee you, I can almost certainly guarantee you, it's just going to be like any other regular day.
How important it is for Washington, D.C. to have statehood so we can have a representative on the front lines fighting for climate change.
We got to fight it. We got to punch it in the face. Punch those cow farts in the face.
Growing up in the Washington, D.C. area, living in public housing near an industrial part of the city, my brothers and I would play outside in air that was thick with pollutants and play in creeks that were also in poor health due to runoff. Our urban environment promised too many youth growing up high asthma rates and water that many of us couldn't drink in full confidence.
Now,
And
pollution's
that is why I
another
am in the
story,
movement for a
okay?
Green New Deal.
There is a such thing as pollution, and I think everyone can agree that we should try to not have pollution. I mean, it's like you've been to those third world countries, or you've seen the images of those third world countries where they've got trash and garbage everywhere, pollution everywhere. But I would say America is actually pretty decent when it comes to recycling and not polluting. I mean, you see old ladies on the side of the street every other weekend picking up trash. I don't see any young people or people part of this Sunrise movement going and picking up trash on the side of the road.
Breathe the air without fear of harmful pollutants, drink the water without worrying about the negative effects on our bodies, and play outside, grow outside, and just be outside in all cities, towns, and communities across America without environmental distress.
There's a difference between pollution
possible, y'all.
and trying
It's
to be
possible
more
because I've seen the
conscientious of
possibility on a local
pollution
level.
versus
Last year in
let's ban
Washington,
cars,
D.C.,
let's ban cows, let's ban everything that the left wants to ban. And trust me, there's a long list of things they want to ban. They don't want airplanes, they don't want cars, they want people to do ride sharing or just ride bicycles everywhere. It's unpractical. The Green New Deal is completely unpractical.
If we can utilize people power to move our city towards 100% clean energy, then we can use the same power, the same energy to hold down the fort here in Washington, D.C. When there is a call to show up, to protest, and to fight on the front lines for the Green New Deal, we, the residents of D.C., don't need to fly in. We don't need to bus in from another city. We are right here.
So here's the next question. Are we going to see some of these green movements, these youthful green movements, start to radicalize as years go on and they think we're getting closer to that 12 end of the world mark? Are we going to see them radicalize and become like Antifa, smashing people in the streets because they think the world's going to come to an end?
Community groups involved, get your unions involved, to get your neighbors involved in this movement alongside Sunrise. Because we know that the overwhelming majority of D.C. residents fully support the Green New Deal, and we have to make sure Congress knows and sees our collective
And we have
power.
to wonder, why do they call themselves the Sunrise Movement? Is it because this is the dawn of a new day, the dawn of a new world order? I mean, are they actually advocating unknowingly for all the policies that the new world order wants them to? But it's in the name of climate change.
And whenever we start to organize for other transformative environmental policies, they continue to push back hard. So as the Green New Deal fight continues to heat up, as we fight for a strong and equitable Green New Deal that includes full employment.
Look at that. Okay, so behind this
100%
guy,
clean
he's
energy,
got what looks like a yellow flag, and it almost looks like a mock-up of the Come and Take It flag with the snake behind it, but he's got like a doctor's stethoscope behind him, and it's like kind of, come and take my health care or something. I don't know. That's interesting.
There will be pushback from corporate interests and even politicians who tell you they want to water down your bills to seek a middle ground.
So he's talking about
with
pushback
corporate
from
lobby.
corporate interests. Oh, all of a sudden, the liberals are all anti-corporation. But wait a second. They're all pro-corporation when it means to silencing their political opposition on social media. So they're okay with big corporations and all their private business rights when it comes to silencing conservatives. But we gotta fight those big corporations. Hypocrites. Double standards. Double standards are rampant within the left.
Of all backgrounds, rise up and organize for a transformative, unapologetic, revolutionary Green New Deal has brought tears of joy to my eyes.
So here's the question. Are we actually going to see Bernie Sanders officially endorse the Green New Deal? And are we going to see AOC officially endorse Bernie Sanders as the candidate she's going to get behind?
Our lives are worth it, that we will win. And the conditions that my family faced were only temporary, because our movement will change the planet for the better, and the sunrise is on the horizon for all of us. Thank y'all so much. I love you.
So far they've had a lot of, ethnic minority groups coming up on stage to speak and talk about essentially and assert that their lives have suffered because of climate change and because of the world and the pollution and the big corporations polluting the world, that they've been personally affected, and that somehow behind climate change is white privilege. That's what they're asserting essentially. Just remember, guys, the reason I'm even able to do this stream, the reason I am able to report to you guys and go out and cover events, and people like Caitlin Bennett are able to do that, is because we are sponsored by InfoWarsStore.com. So go to InfoWarsStore.com and support us. We've got tons of amazing merchandise, hats, shirts, awesome gear. We have supplements. Iodine, for one, is great because we do have water pollutants. Like I said, pollution is a real issue, water pollutants, but you don't see them complaining about fluoride in the drinking water. You don't see them complaining about the chlorine, the fluoride, all that stuff that actually lowers IQs that's put in the drinking water by our government municipalities. So we've got water purification, we have iodine, nascent iodine that helps block out the estrogen mimickers, super male vitality, once again, blocks out the estrogen mimickers that are pollutants in the water. But when Alex Jones wants to talk about atrazine and how literally the herbicide runoff from these big farming corporations was polluting the water so that the frogs were actually turning gay, literally, the left wants to laugh at him for that. Oh, that's funny. That's crazy. He's a nut job. But then they're going to talk about cow farts. What's more concerning to you? Cows farting or actual chemical hormones getting in the water supply that literally make male frogs want to breed with other male frogs getting into your drinking water supply? That should be more concerning, but you don't hear that from the left because, like I said, these groups here, these are propaganda groups that are becoming cults, essentially, that are brainwashed to push the policies that these actual green leftist fascist corporations want them to push. They're pushing New World Order policies, essentially, under the guise of environmentalism. So this is a false alternative, essentially, to helping our environment. This is just pushing big government. More constraints on our liberties and our freedoms. A new world order. Dissolving our rights as Americans. It's not actually going to solve any problems. And their solutions are false alternatives like wind turbines. Wind energy is not clean. It is not efficient. I've been out there. I've done investigative reports on wind energy. Most of these wind turbines are literally connected to the grid. They are connected to coal plants. Why? Because you have to keep those blades turning. Otherwise, the blades will warp. So you always have to have those blades turning on wind turbines. So they have to be hooked up to the grid. So they're hooked up to coal power, typically. And the only time that they collect energy is when you have a very consistent speed of wind. Like there's a range of wind speeds of miles per hour that it has to fall between. And it has to be very consistent wind. It can't be wind gusts that come and stop or come and stop. And because when you do get that, you get dirty electricity. Dirty energy. I mean, I literally spoke to an energy company that was hooked up with a major wind farm in Colorado, and the energy people literally said to me over the phone, we mostly just dump the energy that we get from the wind farm because it's dirty, but we count the carbon credits. So this is all about a carbon credit system where they trade and barter carbon credits. It's a way for these companies to get government subsidies because of the subsidies that Obama put in place, which are starting to run out. And it could be why these green movements are having these big backings and financial support from many of these green corporations like wind turbine corporations that are heavily supported by government subsidies. They want more of those subsidies. So what do they need to do? They need to get Bernie in or a left-wing Democrat politician in that's going to then continue to subsidize big wind because big wind can literally not compete with coal and other energy because it's just so inefficient. It's so inefficient. All it's good for is selling carbon credits and collecting those big government subsidies. I literally was in a meeting in Colorado where this town hall and board of county commissioners was reviewing whether or not they were going to allow a wind turbine to come in and set up in their area. And when asked by the county commissioners if they would continue to do their wind project if they weren't given government subsidies, the wind company said, we would not because we wouldn't financially benefit at all. It wouldn't be efficient. So they even admit that they can't do it. It's so inefficient. They make no money off of it. They actually create carbon emissions while they manufacture the wind turbine blades and parts and all the cement and all the water they use in the cement bases and all the rare earth metals they use inside the wind turbines. It is absolutely unenvironmental. Yet that's the idea. That's the solution that these climate alarmists, mostly young kids, are pushing because they're being told to push it by teachers and authorities that are being financially helped by these big green companies.
The Green New Deal is about creating an historic 10-year mobilization that will mitigate climate emissions and build climate resiliency. We need massive renewable energy deployment, wind, solar, offshore wind, storage batteries. Our energy future will not be found in the dark of a mine, but in the light of the sun. We know the answer.
And believe me, you do not want a wind farm propping up right next door to your house. You do not. There's a reason why the big green corporations and the fascist corporations created this term, NIMBY, not in my backyard, right? They use it to essentially discredit all the people living next to wind farms to make it look like they just don't want it in their backyard. Well, why do they not want it in their backyard? It can't be because all their cattle are dying, their animals or livestock are dying, they're experiencing health impacts. President Trump recently came out and said wind turbines cause cancer. He's not saying that for no reason. He wouldn't just make an assertion like that if they didn't actually have people looking into it and looking at scientific studies that are taking place right now as we speak. You wouldn't want these living next door to you.
Tax breaks that are a permanent part of the tax code, some of which have been on the books for over 100 years. But Republicans only call it socialism when we try to help the things we like. So here's what I say for wind and solar and all-electric vehicles and clean energy. Give us some of that socialism that the oil and gas industry has had for a century.
So they want all clean vehicles. So what do they all want? Electric vehicles? No more gasoline vehicles? Yet these electric vehicles have batteries in them that are toxic and use rare earth minerals, and these batteries don't last that long. They need replaced. So it's like, pick your poison here, guys. And you're going to need to create more electricity to power these cars. They don't want you having a car. That's the real secret. Why? Because it gives you the ability to transport yourself, your family. If you don't have a vehicle, it's going to be a lot harder to have kids because you're not going to be able to transport all your kids around on a bike. Remember, these policies are anti-family. These are Agenda 21 policies.
Humankind, but they do believe and they know that the goals of the Green New Deal are an existential threat to the business model of the Koch brothers and all of their corporate polluters and fossil fuel allies.
But they don't talk about their allies, which is big wind and big solar.
Still saying, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. And we are going to win this fight. Because on every one
Well, they are going to win if conservatives don't get active and vote. And I hope we don't see a future where we no longer have vehicles, we no longer have meat and hot dogs, because yes, they want us eating maggot sausage and bug ice cream. Yes, there was recently a CNN article where these leftists and climate alarmists are talking about how we should just move to eating maggot sausage and bug or tick ice cream. What, lime flavored ice cream? Tick ice cream? This is insane. This is insanity. Nobody wants this. It's not practical.
That is where you come in, because the Green New Deal isn't just a resolution. The Green New Deal is a revolution that is taking place in this country.
These people want population control. They want mandatory vaccines. They want everyone to have a vegan diet, to limit everyone's meat consumption. They want to control the population like none other.
Coal and fossil fuel industries. Are you ready to rise up for wind and solar and clean energy, all electric vehicles?
And this is just wind saying, are you going to rise up against our competitors? Are you going to rise up? By the way, many of the big wind green corporations operating in the United States also operate in China and India and other places. These are global corporations. They are so massive, they can operate in China and the US at the same time. So guess what they're doing in China? Many of these same corporations that are green in the US are actually coal producers in China. So what do? They make a bunch of coal production in China to help China's economy out and give China work and everything. And then they have all this carbon credit debt. So what do? They create wind energy in the US, which is very inefficient, okay? And they use the carbon credits that they earn from the wind energy in the US to offset the carbon they're creating in China. And all they're actually doing is hurting our jobs economy because wind doesn't create jobs and it's very inefficient. So these guys are just pushing for a certain brand of coal and wind against their competitors. Oh, here we go. Here's Bernie Sanders endorsing Green New Deal.
Let me begin by thanking the Sunrise Organization for all of the great work you are doing. And let me thank the young people of this country for leading the effort against climate change.
You know, I think Hitler thanked the young people, too, for leading his Nazi youth program.
Howard University for hosting us on this beautiful campus. And let me thank all of the HBCU students who have done a great job to help solve the climate crisis through HBCU Climate Consortium. Thank you guys very much.
So maybe you're wondering why we didn't cover this event in person. Well, this time it was a private event, and Bernie Sanders would have probably just thrown us out anyway, like he did Caitlin Bennett.
That unlike the President of the United States, you know that climate change is not a hoax, but is an existential threat to our country and the entire planet. And you are prepared to stand up and fight back. Thank you.
12 years, people. They think it's going to end. The whole world is going to end in 12 years.
That the scientific community has been very clear. And that is that if we do not act boldly and aggressively to transform our global energy system away from fossil fuel within the next few years, a very short period of time, there will be irreparable harm done to our planet. And we are united in saying we will not allow that to happen.
What a strategic campaign strategy. The world is going to end unless you vote for me, so I can save it by pushing for big corporate interests. Wonderful.
And dramatically, there will be more rising sea levels, more flooding.
The world will end if you don't
droughts,
vote for me.
More extreme weather disturbances, more acidification of the oceans, and more declines in crop production. You also know that intelligence and defense agencies in the United States and all over the world see climate change as a major national security issue. Because if people cannot grow the crops they need, if people cannot find clean water to
So let me
drink,
guess, I bet he supports Monsanto that sprays glyphosate and chemicals all over their crops all the time, pollutes the water supplies.
resources and cause international
Given that
havoc
Hillary Clinton supported
war.
Monsanto, I can
Climate
almost guarantee
change
he does too.
is a global issue. It impacts not only the United States, but China and Russia and India. It impacts Latin America, Africa, and the entire planet. And let me be very clear. It is absolutely imperative that we have American leadership that does everything possible to bring the nations of the world together.
If you're wondering how the people sitting here are actually believing and buying into this fraud, remember, this is an audience full of young people, many of them still in high school. They are preying on the young, ignorant, naive kids that have been being indoctrinated since school age. Sick.
Well over $1 trillion a year on weapons of destruction. Think about spending that money on making this planet healthy and habitable.
Meanwhile, North Korea had been threatening to launch missiles at us, but let's not put anything into our weapons industry to keep our country safe.
Maybe, just maybe, we might get countries all over the world to give up on their selfish ambitions and understand that bringing the world together to solve this crisis is more important than killing each other.
But wait a second, these guys act like they're so afraid of Putin. How are we going to defend ourselves against Russia? Bernie?
Must lead the world with a global approach which emphasizes the Green New Deal.
Yes, you know, I would say we should be smarter with our money as Americans, but trust me, I can guarantee you Bernie Sanders is not going to be smarter with your money. Yes, your money. When he takes 90% of your income, he's going to give it to sanctuary cities and mandatory health care for all and, you know, free college, which actually won't be free because we'll all be paying for it.
Wind, solar, and other sustainable technologies, massive investments to create energy-efficient transportation
He's got
systems.
lobbyists backing his campaign.
Investments to
almost
build
guaranteed.
Solar panels, wind turbines, and other technologies right here in the United States of America.
Wonder how many millions of dollars he just received from Big Wind for his campaign.
And importantly, as all of you know, the workers in the fossil fuel industry, in the coal mines and on the oil rigs,
So concerned about the workers.
are not our enemies. They're working to feed their families.
But he's going to put them out of employment, essentially. All of them. Because wind does not
That is
create jobs.
why
It does
we
not.
provide a just transition which protects the working
Yes.
families. in the fossil
Transition
fuel
into a
industry.
waiter job. You men that were making good money at coal plants, you can now become a bartender like AOC was and make barely any money.
Combating climate change. It is
See,
necessary
it's about
for us to
destroying
understand
America's industrial power.
that we have an overall economy that is rigged and a political system that is corrupt.
Yeah, and I'd say you're part of the swamp, Bernie Sanders.
And this is an issue we just cannot ignore. A lot of people say, well, I want to combat climate change, but, you know, I don't want to take on the fossil fuel industry. That is not the way it happens. The truth is that right now we have a small number of incredibly powerful billionaires who
What's the
exercise
best way to take on the fossil fuel industry?
over the economic
Ban vehicles and cars that need gas, that need oil. Make everyone drive around in cars they can't afford, like Teslas. Well, you can't afford one? Too bad. Ride a bicycle. That's what these guys want.
and profitable corporations while refusing to make public colleges and universities tuition-free or substantially lower student debt in this country.
What they'll say is join rideshare companies so that you don't own a vehicle, but you just pay to use one like Uber. See, it's about getting us away from our self-sufficiency and our ability to operate without big corporations and government.
You all remember that? Well, I know you weren't born yet, but you read about it. I do remember it. And that is, you had an industry who denied under oath in Congress that cigarette smoking causes cancer.
So if you guys are wondering why I keep chiming in here, it's because I do not want to get a copyright strike on YouTube. So I have to be able to insert my own commentary to show you guys Bernie Sanders' speech here. Otherwise, I'll get striked from YouTube.
In profit every year. And then they deny what carbon emissions are doing to our planet. They lie and lie and lie and spend hundreds of millions of dollars to buy politicians who echo their lies.
That's literally what you're doing, Bernie. You lie and lie and lie so that these big green corporations can buy you so that you can then push new policies that will give them government subsidies. Gee.
More than $700 million worth of campaign contributions into federal, state, and local elections. During that
That's why they don't talk about the bats, the 900,000 bats killed by wind, the 300,000 raptor birds killed by wind annually. They don't care.
And this is what we are up against. The fossil fuel industry has been well rewarded for their campaign contributions and their lobbying. An IMF report found that direct and indirect
because you don't get
subsidies
lobbied, Bernie, and you don't get campaign contributions. This is ridiculous.
$649 billion in 2015. Maybe providing massive support, federal support, to an industry that is destroying our planet makes sense to some people, but sure as hell does not make sense to me.
So Bernie's going to want to tax everyone 90% of their income so that he can give all of our tax money, all of our hard-earned money to these big wind corporations to put up a bunch of wind turbines that are highly inefficient so that then these wind turbines can give us extremely high energy bills. Oh yeah, that's another thing with wind. They give you very high energy bills.
In federal income taxes last year were in the fossil fuel and utility industry. Let us be as clear as we can be. It is time to end all subsidies and tax breaks for the oil and gas companies.
Notice this is all about benefiting big wind and big green companies. This isn't, oh, let's give tax write-offs for Americans that decide to put a solar panel on the roof or a small wind turbine on the roof so they can actually be more energy self-sufficient. No, it's not that. It's let's give tons of subsidies and money to big green corporations. Why? Because they're the ones who are paying and giving him money to support his political campaign. Go figure.
Just as the tobacco industry was ultimately forced to pay for the fraud they committed, the fossil fuel industry must be forced to do the same.
I think wind should be forced to pay for the fraud they're committing. Saying they're environmentally friendly when they kill 1 million bats a year. It's not very environmentally friendly.
Destroy this planet with impunity. So here is the major question.
By the way, killing the bats is a bigger issue than you might think. Bats predominantly eat mosquitoes. So when we have these big Zika scares, the bats are the ones who keep the mosquito populations in check.
Resources. And here is my answer to that question. We need a political revolution.
These people are going to be the new extreme fringe left wing, the far left, that are going to be out violently throwing temper tantrums and displaying emotional incontinence in the streets.
Policy that works for all of us, not just the 1% and their greed.
There's only going to be a 1% and a ultra poor if Bernie gets in and pushes his communist policies and 90% taxes on everyone except his donors and big corporate interests.
Color are experiencing today.
See, there you go. People of color are being hurt from climate change. This is another way to try to falsely associate white privilege with the cause of climate change.
Clean drinking water and clean air should be the right of all Americans, regardless of their income or the color of their skin.
I'm sorry, but is there like a rule somewhere that minority people should drink bad water? I think we all drink the same water from the same public municipalities.
Is that your generation is the most progressive generation in American history.
The people in Flint that are drinking bad water are from all different ethnic backgrounds, but he wants to make it like it's a racial issue.
Anti-xenophobia
It's all
and
virtue signaling.
anti-religious bigotry. Your generation and Sunrise did not wait for an older generation to invite you to take a seat at the table. You took that seat.
He wants to encourage more young people like AOC to get involved in politics and become congressmen and women so that they're more easily duped and easy to manipulate. I mean, older generations that weren't indoctrinated with environmental curriculum education are more skeptical of this line of BS than the young people.
This country, people under 30, is far lower than for older Americans.
He wants to encourage the young people to vote.
Thank you. In my view, if younger people voted at the same percentage rate as older people do, we could transform this country regarding climate change and every other important issue.
So this is how they get the young people motivated to pay attention to politics. They have to literally tell them that the world is going to end in 12 years if they don't. And that's how they get them to be involved. And they're naive and they don't understand that you know, politicians will say whatever they need to back their campaign donors' interests.
We have got to fight for political power. Now, the 1% has unlimited wealth and unbelievable influence over the economic and political life of this country. But at the end of the day, the 1%...
Bernie is the 1%. The 1%, while Bernie's driving around in a fancy sports car that costs more than your average middle-class American's house. The 1% with his multiple houses that he bought from his campaign. Why don't you house some of these, illegal immigrants, these Muslim asylum seekers in your house, Bernie? He hasn't done that. The 1%. See, he just wants middle Americans' money. So the 1% can benefit off of it.
Our job is to transform our energy system, take on the fossil fuel industry, and save the planet. Thank you all very much.
It's like you really think that Bernie Sanders, when he is the 1%, he is part of the 1%, is actually campaigning against his best interests? Give me a break. That should be like the first red flag. The 1%, the 1%, the 1%, they're our enemy. We're going to hurt the 1%. We're not going to benefit the 1% when he is the 1%. And he's benefiting these big billion-dollar corporate wind organizations It's so ridiculous. It's just, this is a cult of young people. And just, so remember, guys, please go to InfoWarsStore.com to support us so we can continue to do these type of feeds, go out and cover these things. We're going to have to battle these young people and go to college campuses to have these type of political discussions with these young people that have been being brainwashed since a young age in school with this environmental curriculum that the Democrats and school teachers, which are mostly run by Democrats, have slipped into the curriculum. We have to figure out a way to fix this problem. Otherwise, we're going to have the Green Party becoming a huge movement. We're going to have more Democrats pushing Green Party policies in, and it's just it's going to be bad, guys. It'll be bad. You don't want young people that don't know anything, young people like David Hogg controlling your life. You don't. So please go to InfoWarsStore.com so we can continue to fund this operation, so myself, Caitlin Bennett, and others can go out and open these people's minds, change their minds, wake them up to the realization that they've been being indoctrinated since a young age. So that's InfoWarsStore.com. We've got water filters where you can have clean water that doesn't have fluoride in it. We've got, Survival Shield X2, Nascent Iodine, Turbo Force. Turbo Force is really good for if you're studying for college exams. I mean, it just snaps you into focus. And, there's many other good products, Brain Force, Knockout, Sleep Aid. So go to InfoWarsStore.com, check out our gear, our merchandise, hats and stuff, and support our operation. So let's go back to this Green New Deal, this cult of essentially climate alarmists that think the world is going to end in 12 years. They're continuing on here.
The ordinary
Let's see what they're
American
saying.
is thus reduced to the status of a robot. And then there's the
So this is Naomi Klein that's speaking right now.
Friends. Sure, you have some worthy ideas, but it's too much. We need to slow down, find the middle ground.
Boo, you're not radical enough. They're booing her. We want to ban all meat, all hot dogs, all cars, all cows.
In 1933, lodged against FDR's original New Deal. But here's the funny thing. They were spectacularly unsuccessful. As the original New Deal rolled out, its popularity grew and grew. And one reason for that is that, like the Sunrise Movement today...
How did most of these people attending this meeting, this speech, get there? Via cars with fossil fuels in them. This is hilarious. I want to see all these people ride their bikes to this event, because that's what they're pushing for. They want to take away our cars. They want everyone to be riding bicycles, taking public transit. You go first. You go first, liberals.
They got a whole lot right. Tens of thousands of painters, playwrights, and photographers.
Not to mention how that will actually put a lot of women in safety, in danger, actually. Their safety will be in jeopardy, because going through sketchy areas of town at night, you can't ride a bike around, bad areas of town at nighttime as a woman. And remember, they don't want you to have a gun, so you can't have a gun for your own personal protection. So they want to just put all these women at risk? Are we not going to be able to, get ourselves from point A and point B and feel safe? Because if you're in a car, you're a lot safer than if you're riding a bike. So it would actually cause people to be, women, elderly, children, to be at more risk of something bad happening to them.
Maker to talk about whether something like that could happen again.
It's almost like they haven't thought these things out.
For a Green New Deal. Because here's something we don't talk about very much. Art is actually pretty low carbon. You don't have to burn a lot of fossil fuels to put on a play. It doesn't take a lot of coal to get a bunch of kids together from the neighborhood and paint an amazing mural.
So everyone should just become artists.
It lifts spirits.
That's what they think. Everyone can just become artists.
And maybe
there's a lot of starving artists out there.
Imagine a different kind of world. One where we make bold and brave decisions to shift away from what we have today, which is what I call the gig and dig economy, which is all about taking endlessly.
This is
from
all
workers
just selling a
at the
utopia to
bank
young people
as
that
if
doesn't
there is no
exist.
limit, as if there is no
You can all
consequences
just
for
become
all
artists.
that.
Vote for us. You can all just become artists, and you don't have to work a hard job. And how you're going to pay for that lifestyle? Oh, we're just going to tax everyone in America 90% of their income and then redistribute that wealth with some kind of UBI. And that's going to really work because we saw how that worked for Venezuela.
Upon which all of life depends, and repairing our relationships with each other, and that begins with repairing the harm and beginning to heal the wounds that date back to the original crimes of the founding of this nation, which is the stealing of African bodies and the stealing of indigenous land. That is climate justice.
I wouldn't put it past these people to literally
But a lot of us
deport
have trouble.
white families from certain towns and areas because they colonized an area that used to be hundreds and hundreds of years ago colonized by Native Americans. These people are nuts.
No alternative to the crappy reality we have today, save with a few maybe tweaks here and there. From mainstream economists, we have been told that human beings are fundamentally selfish, gratification-seeking units capable of nothing more than seeking out a consumer or dopamine hit. And you know what? Hollywood has let us down too. Almost every picture of the future we get is some version of the Mad Max.
It's so
zombie
crappy.
climate.
Almost everyone and their mom can afford a smartphone, a tablet, a computer to access the free web, the internet. It's so horrible. Almost everyone can eat like kings, but so bad. I mean, it's so bad here in America, but man, we should strive to be like Venezuela. They've got it good in Venezuela because socialism. They're appealing to spoiled
And what
kids
Molly-
that are living in their
what
parents'
Molly
basement.
And I realized is that if we're going to win a Green New Deal, we're going to have to start telling different stories about who we are and about the kinds of futures that are within our grasp. And that's going to take art, lots of it.
Lots of
So we decided to get
propaganda
the
to
ball
appeal
rolling with a little
to
film.
people's emotional and
Race to get it done
reactions
for the
and
first
pull on
stop
their
of this tour.
heartstrings
It is the
to
work of an
perpetuate
amazing
their
team, the
propaganda
Intercept,
to
Kim
toe the
Buchbinder,
line
Jim
for the
Blatt,
New
Bobby
World
Lewis
Order.
from The Leap, and of course,
Think
all
about
the
it. If you were
crab-apple.
to tank, because most people would say, well, why would these Democrats actually want to tank the economy with socialism? They don't want to destroy America. Well, wait a second. Every other one of these leftists or Democrats are talking about how they hate America. Gee, it can't be because they're getting this from somewhere, from political movements, from political figures. So why wouldn't they want to destroy America? Why wouldn't they want to bankrupt the United States so that then the United States is forced to form an alliance and become consolidated into a global world government that then these controllers could essentially control vast parts of the world and force their climate policies, which really are just big government policies that take away power and self-sufficiency from the little man, to everyone across the world, essentially.
Time they saw themselves. I think there was something similar with the Green New Deal. We knew that we needed to save the planet and that we had all the technology to do it. But people were scared. They said it was too big, too fast, not practical. I think that's because they just couldn't picture it yet.
See, they want to
Anyways,
save the
I'm not
planet.
getting ahead
They
of
don't want to put America first. They don't want to save America. They want to save the planet. Which, the newsflash, the planet isn't going to die in 12 years.
Fossil fuels could eventually lead to global temperatures rising 4 or 5 degrees Fahrenheit. Within 2 years, one of the world's biggest supertankers was outfitted with a state-of-the-art lab to measure CO2 in the ocean, gathering more data about global warming.
By the
Guess
way,
who was doing
CO2
all of
levels
this?
were much higher millions of years ago during the dinosaurs and other ages than they are today. And guess what? The world didn't end. And no, the dinosaurs did not go extinct because of CO2.
Top climate scientist told Congress he was 99% certain that global warming was happening and caused by humans. That was 1988, the year before I was even born. So did Exxon listen to the science, including their own? Did they change business models, invest in renewables? No, the opposite. They knew and they doubled down. They and others spent millions setting up a network of lobby groups and think tanks to create doubt and denial about climate change. It was an effort designed to attack and dispute the very kind of science they themselves had been doing. And it worked.
If you just like inverse exactly what they're talking about, we're talking about interest groups that have spent millions and millions of dollars to fund climate change alarmism, essentially to put in curriculum in schools, to put out all these campaigns, to suddenly, very quickly, make all the youth think the world's going to come to an end. And they've been pretty effective at it.
We lost a generation of time we'll never get back. Entire species will never get back. Natural wonders gone forever. And in 2017, Hurricane Maria destroyed the place where my family was from, Puerto Rico. It was like a climate bomb. It took as many American lives as 9/11. And in the next year, when I was elected to Congress, the world's leading climate scientists declared another emergency. They told
And
us
by
that
the
we
way,
had
there are
12
historical
years
records of tsunamis, hurricanes, tornadoes from long, long ago.
likely to face food
Hurricanes are not caused by climate change.
and death. 12 years to change everything. How we got around, how we fed ourselves, how we made our stuff, how we lived and worked, everything. The only way to do it was to transform our economy, which we already knew was broken.
The only way to
since
save the
vast
earth
majority
is
of
to
wealth
transform our
was going
economy
to
into
just a small
communism.
handful of people. And
Gee.
most folks were falling further
So
and
why do
further
they call
behind. It
the
was a
Green
true
Party the Watermelon Party? Because
Lots
it's
of
green
people
on the
did.
outside
They said
and
we
it's
were
red in the center. Communism in the center. Communism behind it.
War, the Great Depression, World War II. We knew from our history how to pull together to overcome impossible odds. And at the very least, we owed it to our children to try. The wave began when Democrats took back the House in 2018, and then the Senate and the White House in 2020, and launched the decade of the Green New Deal, a flurry of legislation that kicked off our social and ecological
See, these guys don't
transformation
just
to
want
save the planet.
the brand of communism that the Soviets had. These guys want the brand of communism that China has. A communist government, communist power structure. But they also engage in capitalism so that these big corporations can benefit from the Chinese communist system, essentially. So what you end up having is you have all the masses are poor, living in squalor. And then you have the aristocrats and this uber super wealthy billionaires in China that are the insiders crowd that build all these sky rises, all these buildings, these condominiums, and they're empty because the poor that live in China can't even afford them. That's what these guys want. You really think they're going to evenly distribute the wealth amongst everyone? No, people like Bernie and AOC are going to be living in the lap of luxury, and it's going to be all of us, little people, that are going to be poor, living in squalor, and not even be able to afford the homes and the apartments that we have. We'll just have tent cities everywhere.
Generational expertise to help guide the way. Ileana got restless, tried her hand as a solar plant engineer for a while, but eventually made her career in raising the next generation as part of the Universal Child Care Initiative. As it turns out, caring for others is valuable, low-carbon work, and we started paying real money to folks like teachers, domestic workers, and home health aides. Those were years of massive change, and not all of it was good. When Hurricane Sheldon hit southern Florida, parts of Miami went underwater for the last time. But as we battled,
they're using natural disasters and weather events to base their argument that climate change is real, when these weather events have been happening on document since the beginning of time of Earth. Okay, so this is absolutely a logical fallacy here.
Scared of each other, and we found our shared purpose. Ileana heard the call too, and in 2028 she ran for office in the first cycle of publicly funded election campaigns. And now she occupies the seat that I once held. I couldn't be more proud of her, a true child of the Green New Deal. When I think back to my first term in Congress...
These are children of the Green New Deal. You just heard it. These are kids that have been indoctrinated since youth. Parents, be aware that if your child is in public school right now, they are being indoctrinated with environmental curriculum education, just as they are being indoctrinated with the LGBTQ indoctrination and curriculum that's in schools as well. Unreal. Just like, you know, Hitler wanted the youth. Why did he want the youth? Because he knew that the youth one day is going to move into a position of power, and that's the way that they can grab power, is by indoctrinating them when they're young and when they're subjectable, when they don't have these barriers of skepticism up. It's horrible. Taking advantage of the youth and children.
Who are literally changing the world in front of us here. And our friend AOC really got us kicked off on this conversation, but I wanted to gather these folks to discuss.
So it looks like AOC isn't necessarily going to be speaking at this event, but it looks like Bernie Sanders was, because they did have this this video from AOC, which I'm wondering if this is... What'd you say?
3,000 people to vote.
Okay, so maybe AOC is going to speak soon. Let's see. Let's see what she has to say.
Climate Change Consortium. He's a social and business entrepreneur and is currently the executive director of the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists Education Center and the Michigan co-chair for the NAACP's Environmental and Climate Justice Program. Welcome, Peyton. Woo! To Peyton's left, we have Rihanna Gunn-Wright, who is the...
I don't even know how these young people can sit through this thing, because it's just so redundant. They're just using emotional appeals, telling everyone the world's going to end. I want them to tell me how the world's going to end. I guess they said that, you know, ocean levels are going to rise. They think that sky rises are going to be underwater. It's very unlikely. You know, we've had doomsdayers for a long time, but only now are we seeing doomsdayers being turned into a political activist cult that then is deployed and weaponized on our politicians and on our American way of living.
So, give a warm welcome to these incredible young folks. Okay, so, I want to start with you, Alex. We just heard that incredible video from AOC, and you've been involved in AOC's campaign and in Bernie's as well, and your main arena of engagement as Justice Democrats is through primaries.
Okay, so these look like AOC staffers talking right now on a panel.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited to be here. Look at everybody. This is so crazy. Yeah, I think primaries matter, like, in the sense of, look at where we are right now, right? I think back in sort of 2016, a lot of us
essentially what we're just getting at here is this is a real issue within our country, and now that Bernie Sanders pretty much endorsed, I could say he endorsed the Green New Deal. That's essentially what he did here. He was talking their talk and essentially pushing the Green New Deal. So there you have it, folks. you really think that Bernie's going to get elected on that? I mean, I don't know. I've heard from some of my liberal relatives that they think the climate alarmist stuff is too far. It's too radical. Most of them think it's baloney. So I wonder how Bernie Sanders is going to try to balance the radical young people who have been radicalized by this indoctrination and Green Party political movement versus the moderate Democrats that are older, wiser, that are more skeptical of this cultish line of thinking that they're pushing, where, you know, they've lived through Y2K and they lived through all these doomsday hoaxes, essentially. So they're more skeptical of this new doomsday hoax. They're not buying into this line of propaganda.
A lot of people have been calling you one of the architects of the Green New Deal.
So I wonder if AOC is still holding out on her endorsement for Bernie Sanders. We'll see whether or not she actually comes forward and officially endorses Bernie Sanders, because we've been hearing talk in the media. They've been questioning who has, you know, AOC chosen to endorse and essentially tell her little Green Party cult young people to get behind as a political candidate for 2020.
Policy tends to be made behind closed doors with a group of clever, generally white people, mostly
Look
white
at this
men.
Racism. These Democrats, these liberals are pretty racist if you actually listen to what they talk about.
Right? And what that means is that the compromises have largely already been made, right? The choices have been made about what policies are going to be in place, how they're going to be used, and what people they're going to impact. And so essentially, the choices about power relationships have already been made before they go into communities. And so the Green New Deal is trying to back that up. So the first thing is we released a resolution. Well, I didn't, but it came out. And that.
So she's essentially saying that the Green New Deal is anti-white. That's pretty much what she's saying here.
What we need to do, and it's meant to create an opening so that.
But she'll tell you it's anti-white privilege.
Right, so we move the conversation out from behind closed doors into the open. And so the next 2 years will be, I mean, new consensus, we have this like complicated policy process, but at the core, it's about keeping the folks who will be most impacted at the center and letting them shape the policy.
Yes. See, they claim, so this is why they claim that minorities are most affected from climate change, is so that they can then be moved into the center of the power position and subjugate the white people around them.
Is that we talk about people being disposable. Well, young people are treated largely like, it's great for you to be activists, it's great for you to be in the movement, but once it comes to policy, get back, the real adults will come into the room. Well, we are the real adults. So
yeah, we should have 18-year-olds controlling the world. That's a great idea, because we all didn't do things when we were 18 we regret it, right?
Who are leading the fight are the same people writing the policy, and that we don't get kicked out of the back door, and trust these adults who largely have made no movement to now try to carry forward a framework that they still don't.
I wonder if this is the same way the Nazi youth thought. They thought, you know, these adults haven't been running things right. We need to just move these adults out of the way, that we're older and wiser, and we should be the ones to take control of the government. That's probably what the Nazi youth thought as well.
The HBCU Climate Consortium and why?
These are the new brown
So
shirts.
my name's Peyton Wilkins. I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. I work for the Coalition of
What up,
Black Trade
Because
Unionists.
what's behind all their little happy,
the
little
Coalition of Black
stories
Trade
and emotional
Unionists,
appeals,
was
and
created
we're trying to
out
be
of
so
this
inclusive, but we're extremely, uninclusive to everyone else that we don't like. What they don't tell you is that all these policies they're pushing for are going to control your every waking moment of life and take away your rights take away your sovereignty and take away your self-sufficiency from the government and from big corporations so that we can all just be corporate slaves.
Nixon versus George McGovern. Does that sound familiar, folks? All right, cool. They felt that his neutral stance on this election,
and I don't
was
think that
detrimental
these
to him, that they
people
had gotten
actually
ignored and left out of
realize
this
or
process,
know
right? So it
what
creates
they're
this,
doing and saying. But I would say someone like,
opportunity
you know, Bernie
for them
Sanders,
to,
he has to be
great
well
steps to
aware
great
of
leadership
the
and the
scheme, the
bigger voices really
hoax
doing it,
that's
right?
going
So
on
I
here.
think what's
But I think
important,
these younger people
about
that
this
they
is
have
like,
up in the
since
seats
1972,
actually
they got
believe
1,200
it.
people
And that's
together without
why
Facebook.
they
You know
want to
what I'm saying?
replace
Like, that's in
the
the
older, wiser people with these young people that are just completely nuts. I mean, you go to most young people in America today, you can tell that our public school systems have failed us. You can tell that critical thinking, logic, none of that was taught to children in schools. You can go ask kids on, you know, on a pier somewhere, on a beach, anywhere out in the public, you know, just basic facts about our history, about our country. Even today, you can ask them, Caitlin Bennett went out today and asked these kids who the vice president was in New York City, and nobody knew even who the vice president of the United States was right now, or is right now. That's how bad it is, but we should, you know, the older people should step aside and let these young kids who don't know anything other than the propaganda that they're being told, yeah, they should be the ones behind the control switch. Great idea.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah, totally.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you, Paige. And I mean, I'll stick with you for a second. So I'm kind of curious, like, for us in the room when we think about implementation.
Smart
What
meters for
are
everyone.
some of
You
the-
know it.
the
That's
major
what's.
learnings that you
That's
have
what. I'm
working
surprised
in
we haven't heard
CDC
any of them
that
saying
might help
that
us
today.
understand how we involve labor and people of color in the movement for and in the process of implementing the Green New Deal.
You know, I really appreciate Carrie saying this earlier, speaking to like
These
the
guys all act like
intentionality
they're
of
against big
diversity, right?
corporations,
Making sure
but
that
none of them
individuals
speak
are
out
being
against
brought in at the
the
beginning.
corporate monopolies
But
that
I
many of
would
these
be remiss
social
if I
media
didn't mention
companies
that,
have
you know, we
today,
are very
and
much
how
so
they're literally
involved,
deplatforming the man or the little man, so to speak. They don't care about that, because these guys actually don't believe in the little man having rights. They don't believe in the little man having free speech. They don't believe in the little man having gun rights to protect themselves. Oh, but these big, powerful politicians and big corporate CEOs, they can afford to hire private security. Bernie Sanders and AOC and all of them can now afford to hire private security, but the little man can't afford that. So what does the little man have? He has the Second Amendment. These guys want to destroy the Second Amendment, destroy free speech, and destroy your right to even have a vehicle to transport yourself, because I guarantee the little man's not going to be able to afford their expensive electric vehicles. I mean, this is very anti-middle class, anti-little man, pro-big corporate. But these guys are too brainwashed to see it.
And it's all about self-determination. And I'm going to leave it like this, right? So.
Sweet. Thank you, Peyton. So, Rihanna, can you share a little bit about what should we actually be looking for from these 2020s? We've talked about that a lot today, specifically with regards to their climate platforms and the Green New Deal.
So I will say, I think you should be looking for three things. The first is intersectionality. If you are talking about climate and climate alone, you're doing it wrong. And if your plan can be executed by just the DOE, you're doing it wrong, right? And DOE, Department of Energy. I think the second is it needs to demonstrate a willingness to put the full might of our country behind this fight. So it has to be about an economy-wide national mobilization that is well-funded, that is led at the local level, but supported deeply at the federal
level. There you go. Economy. She's talking about more taxes on the man.
Looking at is scale, right? This is a problem. The next decade is crucial, right? It is crucial for us being able to have a healthy climate. And 2050, whatever timeline people choose, more time is not an excuse to maintain the status quo as long as possible. And so if you are seeing policies that say, oh, we're going to go net zero by this date, and there's nothing in the middle.
So it says, help make the Green New Deal a
That's a
top
problem.
2020 issue. Please
And
do.
so
Honestly,
you need to be
I really feel like this Green New Deal policy is going to fall deaf on many of the moderate Democrats. So I hope these radicalized people do make the Green New Deal a 2020 issue, because I don't see many moderate Democrats jumping on board this ludicrous hoax.
That is what these plans need to show. So I would say look for those things, and there's lots of other things you can be thinking about, investment levels, but those three things are so you need to be intersectional, you need to be talking about more than climate, you need to show a full commitment, and you need to recognize the scale, speed, and scope of which this needs to happen. And if those plans don't see that, push that candidate, or, move on. I don't know, it's your choice.
Amazing. Thank you, Rihanna. And my last question to Alex. From your perspective, sort of electorally and politically, what do we need to do to win in 2020 and elect a Congress that's accountable to working people?
Well, I mean, first thing is it's going to take 2020 and beyond, right? This fight, even though we want to win it as soon as possible, at least in the federal level, we have to keep pushing and pushing. But for us right now, I mean, I used to think that we needed a completely new Congress in order to change everything, and we still do one day. But I think we've seen what happens when you can win one earth-shattering
I don't see these people
right?
being the greatest minds and the greatest thinkers in our
landscape
nation.
to make
Like,
moments
I
like
don't
this
know
possible.
why they think that these people should be the authority
So I think as we
on
look
what
towards
direction our nation should go.
that you asked about why primaries matter, a lot of what we have to do is tell the rest of the country that now is the time to get involved. Now is the time to elect Democrats that are going to fight for a Green New Deal, that are going to fight for Medicare for all, no corporate money, free college, $15 living wage, ending mass incarceration, ending mass deportation. That happens during competitive primary
$15
elections.
minimum wage for
and it's
everyone,
not-
yet they don't
it's not,
know what will happen
enough.
if they do
Again,
that, and how many mom and pop shops they will
here,
shut down,
like
essentially.
Joe Biden said that he was middle of the road on climate policy. Boom.
Just like they wanted to force Obamacare
That
on
means
everyone.
that right now,
It hurt
regardless of
the
who
middle-class
you,
Americans and the
like
small
during the
business
2020
owners.
Presidential primary, you need to be pushing and making sure that every young person, every working class community is going out and talking about the issues that we care about and is electing champions. Because we've seen that when you combine not just sort of the electoral side, but working with folks like Sunrise and others to merge that with social movements, how much power it creates to make moments like this possible. And I hadn't even realized until
free
Varsity
college
posted all
sounds
of that
great.
today
Free
literally
health care
marks the
sounds great.
6-month
All these
anniversary
things
since
they're
the Senate.
promising, it sounds so great. But when you know what you have to give up in exchange, oh, see, that's when you find out the hard way what the catch is. Oh, they want to tax 90% of your income so that you can then get really horrible, crappy health care and wait for months on end to receive surgeries and other treatments you need, with also bad colleges. I mean, so free college, so free education, free college. Now everyone has a college degree. Now your degree really doesn't mean much. If everyone's got one, does it really set you apart for an employment position from somebody else? No, it doesn't. So it actually devalues that college certificate. And what is the free college actually going to do? It's just going to continue to indoctrinate our young people into this liberal propaganda. What's happening at the liberal universities? All these universities are indoctrinating college kids with extreme belief systems, communist belief systems, all this LGBTQ propaganda. We've got college kids with emotional incontinence running around This is what happens when you send these kids to these universities. So, yeah, free that for everyone, right? That's what they want. They want all the young people to be turned into these college SJWs. We need trade schools. That's what we need. Trade schools where kids can learn real skills, not women's studies and whatever other fodder they're giving these kids at the universities these days. If you're going to university to become a doctor, become a lawyer, an architect, an engineer, makes sense. But a lot of these other people should be going to trade schools and learning real skills.
2021. And we think that this will require 3 things. 1, a movement of literally millions in the streets. Today's a good start. We need a House and a Senate on the side of climate action and a president who's ready to fight.
Don't be surprised when we see millions of young people actually marching in D.C. Like we saw with the Women's March and the March for Our Lives. It's going to happen, guys. The propaganda, the brainwashing machine, the amount of money that these big green corporations are putting into this, it's going to create a revolutionary group that's going to be pushing very extreme ideas like this Green New Deal.
For decades, and they've continued to buddy up with fossil fuel executives who have jeopardized our future.
I would say that parents need to get active. Parents need to go down to their children's schools and ask if they are pushing and teaching the environmental curriculum, the environmental sustainability curriculum. Many of these Democrat states have already made this mandatory curriculum. In fact, in Oregon, if the teacher says otherwise or teaches the children that climate change is over-exaggerated or is a hoax, that teacher can be punished by the school board and even lose their job. It's that serious. That's in Oregon right now.
Stand on this issue.
Parents need to get just as active about their children being brainwashed.
So we're not waiting around. We're not
as they are with the whole LGBTQ propaganda in schools.
And it's July 30th. That's the date of the second Democratic presidential debate that's taking place in Detroit. And between now and then is when a lot of these candidates will be developing their platforms and putting forward their plans. It's a crucial window of time. That's one of our best chances yet to hold all these candidates accountable to our vision. So let's take a step back for a second. Do you all remember how many questions were asked about climate change in the 2016 or 2012 general election? Yeah, big fat 0. And that is not okay. Because what gets talked about in these presidential debates defines what's the priority for the next administration. And this is the year we have to change the debate. So
and this is the reason why we're going to hear more questions about climate change in our political debates for this campaign season, is because these kids that have been indoctrinated in the schools are now coming of age in 2020 and ready to vote.
About the Green New Deal and the climate crisis. The second debate is in Detroit at the end of July. And at this debate, we will challenge every presidential candidate to meet with our movement face to face. We'll gather by the thousands and set up a people's stage near the official presidential debate location. This will be the largest action our movement has organized to date for the Green New Deal. That's right. And we are giving these candidates a deadline, July 30th. We're giving them 24 hours from the time that the debates start to meet the 3 demands I mentioned before. What are they? No fossil fuel money pledge. Green New Deal, day 1 priority. Climate debate, amazing. Yes, killed it. And
no
at this
fossil
point,
fuel pledge? They want candidates to literally campaign on banning fossil fuels? That's insane.
Vigil for the people and places that we've lost, and together we are going to continue what we started in November.
This is crazy. These kids just don't seem to be in touch with reality.
And on the second day after those 24 hours have passed, we will take down the people's stage and we will know where every candidate stands on our demands. Leadership comes from the people. It comes from the grassroots. And when we come together, we can show that there is a force to be reckoned with, that there is a movement behind our demands. We need you. So if you want to host a debate watch party, if you want to throw
See,
down
this is why
in
this is so
Detroit,
sketchy.
if you're not sure,
They've got all these young people who've been indoctrinated and all these propaganda videos and movements essentially trying to indoctrinate even more young people into the belief that the world's going to end if they don't support Democrat candidates that push these extremist New Deal policies, essentially, that the world's going to end. So what's going to happen then when all these conservative voices get kicked off and banned off the internet? What's going to happen when, you know, my channel's gone, Caitlin's channel, Paul Watson's channel, and even Ben Shapiro's channel, even Steven Crowder's channel, even Joe Rogan's channel? What happens when all of our channels, just one by one, all of our presence on the internet just disappears, and the only voices who are left are these voices? And your average lemming out there who doesn't even know who the first president of the United States was or who the current vice president is or anything about our government, our country, whatever, when those people are indoctrinated with this line of thinking, this propaganda, this fear-mongering, what's going to happen? You're going to see our American way of life gone in an instant because you're going to have a young movement of youth who doesn't understand the importance of the Constitution and the rights that we have in this country that sets America apart. There's a reason why all these people want to come to our country. It's because we have these rights. And these people have had them for so long, and they've never had to do without having these rights, that they don't understand what it would be like for them if they didn't have them. So they're going to literally advocate for their own demise. They're going to be the lemmings that run off the cliff because there's a carrot on a stick being dangled over the edge. And we need to be making as loud of a noise as we can, and we need people like you to be supporting us so we can continue to go out and spread the message that these people are leading our young people astray, to refute their arguments, essentially.
I give it every single thing that we have got. That's right. So I want to ask you, do you believe the science? Do you believe in justice?
They don't believe science when it says there's only two genders.
That we must organize, and we gotta mobilize, and we gotta get everybody in this movement to shake the very foundations of this world. To those who sow hate and division,
emotional incontinence on display.
And I want to ask, are you with me in that fight? Are you with me in that fight?
We believe in science. We believe in science, but not when it comes to gender. But not when it comes to gender. Only when it's convenient. Yay!
I believe that we can do it. So will you join me in helping write the next chapter?
We believe in science that has been heavily funded by green lobbyist corporations. Yay! We believe in scientific studies that slant their data.
Mecca, are you ready? Are we ready to take back our future and take back our lives? Because that is what this fight is all about.
Here she is, guys.
Thank you for showing up. Thank you for fighting for our lives, and thank you for fighting for the generations to come, because we are not going to give up. We are not going to give up on the fight.
This woman doesn't even know what a garbage disposal is.
To make sure that we live a
I'm just
sustainable
kidding.
and just and provide and have a life and an environment that provides for all people, not just the privileged few. They gave me 2 microphones. I'm not sure why. Probably because I'm walking around so much.
She doesn't.
I want to thank you all so much
Oh,
for
wow.
joining us
She doesn't
today,
know which
because this is
microphone to
truly a
use.
call to organize. And I'm gonna transition here.
This woman can't even operate a microphone on stage.
I want to thank
And
you all
she's
again
running for
so much
Congress.
showing up, because once again, this is a call to organize.
Or she's in Congress.
This is a call to reorganize and to make sure that we are fighting for a just economy, for a just society, a just environment, and a just future for the United States of America and the world. It was reported today that this weekend, for the first time in human history, we have reached atmospheric levels of carbon at 415 parts per million. This has never been seen in recorded human history. In fact, meteorologist Eric Holthus and journalists said simply about this measurement and development, we do not know a planet like this.
Oh, this sounds like a bunch of baloney. You see? Oh, during human. Okay, so look, there we go.
We're 90 feet higher. Bacteria and
But wait a
diseases
second.
we have
During
never
that
seen
period, did you
before
have man-made climate
roamed
change?
The earth.
No.
Humans
We
did
had
not exist. We
ice
have
ages
never
and
seen
warming periods.
And a planet like this is exactly what we are going to get. And it is exactly what we are going to inherit from previous generations if we do not act positively now.
It's all just fear-mongering. The world's going to end in 12 years if we don't elect Bernie Sanders now. That's what they're doing.
That is the simple
Fear-mongering.
truth. So often, you know, when folks, particularly conservatives on both sides of the aisle, say, when they say that calling for a Green New Deal is, quote, too much or too extreme or too radical, no middle ground is right.
No middle ground. You hear these people? These
say
people
that,
are
it's too much.
extremists.
But do they actually?
They literally want to ban meat. They literally want to ban cows. They want to ban cars, except for electric vehicles that you can't afford. They want you to ride bikes. That doesn't work out in rural America. It works in cities. It doesn't work in rural America.
No. But let me tell you what's too much for me. Here's what's too much for me. What's too much for me is politicians looking and allowing babies' blood to get poisoned in Flint for corporate profits. That is what is too much for me. What's
Okay,
too
so she
much
takes
for
a
me?
real issue
What's too
of
much for me
pollution,
is
a real issue of pollution, okay, and somehow mixes that as evidence that supports climate change as a whole, which we still don't have evidence that man is creating any of this change that we're seeing with the climate. And if anything, we're seeing more evidence that it's linked to solar cycles. Yes, there have been tons of studies out there that link solar cycles to our ice ages and our warming periods.
Instead of being part of the solution, they paid millions of dollars to lobby and lie and confuse the American public about it, endangering generations to come. That is too much for me.
Why don't you tell us who's paying for you, Ocasio-Cortez? Tell us who your donors are. Who are the people that have lobbied to you? Big billion-dollar corporations? Wind corporations that also own coal plants in China? Yeah, that's right.
Right before, that politicians were first informed
This is about
by
destroying
NASA,
America.
That Congress was first notified by NASA that climate change was going to threaten my life and everyone here's life.
We
to
could
come, and they
literally
did nothing.
get
That
rid of
is
all
too
of our
much
coal.
for me.
We could literally live like we're in the Paleolithic times, all of us in the United States. And it would not even affect the CO2 level at all, because China and these other countries aren't going to do anything different. So we can implement all these policies, and it won't do anything but destroy our economy and destroy our country and our freedoms. It's going to make living and life miserable.
Cannot, and we will not accept anything less than a solution to save ourselves.
I would say
And
what's
that's exactly
reasonable
what this
is to implement policies to have clean water for people. That's reasonable. And what's happening in Flint is ridiculous. That's a reasonable thing to change. But to then advocate to take away all cars, to take away planes, to take away hot dogs and meat, that's insanity.
Because I'm not interested in lying to you. But frankly, there is no reason for us to be comfortable right now. We are at 4:15. 4:15. There is no reason for us to be comfortable. And I'm not here to guarantee to you that everything will be okay. But what I am here to say is that we must try. We must try. I am not here to tell you,
because it used to be green.
I am not here to tell
Today
you
it is
that all
icy.
Democrats are good
And so if
all
it
Republicans
warms up
are
again
bad.
like it did during the medieval warm period, Greenland might become green again. But the world isn't going to end, okay? The world's not going to end.
Because I've been in that chamber.
These guys
I've
are
been told by-
also
from people
pushing
on both sides
for
of the aisle that we need to
chemtrails
frack
and
more, that
terraforming.
we need to build
So
more
when they used to
both
deny
sides.
chemtrails, now Andrew Yang and many of these other Democrats are literally pushing that we should do chemtrails in the name of climate change.
With your help, with your insistence, with your organizing, with your demands, with your voting, with your mobilizing a broader electorate than we have ever seen before in American history, we do not have to go down that path. Our history may be written, but our future is not. And we have every possibility in the world to change it.
I don't even think these
And
people have talked about
cynicism
America once.
About our future.
These people only care about what they want for the planet, for a global planet. They don't talk about America and how America should be put first for Americans' benefit.
False. We are at a crossroads unlike any we have seen before. But the good thing is that the average everyday person has never been more powerful in human history than it is today. Never been more powerful. Between our abilities to educate ourselves, educate others, the abilities to win over our families, to have these conversations, to register and get
because
people
people
to the
have
polls,
freedom
have
to
people
speak on the
organize
internet
issues,
and
to
talk
elevate
and
our
rally
collective
people for their
consciousness
cause.
about racial
It is a powerful thing. But these people don't want to stand up against the censorship that these big corporations are doing to people because they don't like their opinions.
They are fighting so hard against the Green New Deal. We are at a precipice. We are at a critical precipice. And the reason why you hear constant disinformation, targeting, screaming, crying, storytelling about the Green New Deal is because they know how vulnerable they are. If they didn't, they wouldn't be doing
It's
this.
because we know how crazy
If it
you
really
people
was just
are.
a silly
And
little
we
fairy
know
tale,
that what you're
they
pushing
would've
would
just let it
destroy America as we know it
But
and
they
not
know.
even do a darn
They
thing to
know.
touch or move the CO2 levels at all whatsoever. Because China and everyone else is going to continue to be pumping coal and doing whatever else they're doing. America is one of the most cleanest nations compared to all these other countries that have trash everywhere. But they want us to destroy our economy as we know it. Ridiculous.
Leadership and responsibility, we finally are stepping into that void, taking our future for ourselves, and we will change this country, and we will change the future to be more just. Because the logic that we are fighting
by the way,
against right
Facebook has
now,
already
this is
started
not just about
banning
putting
and
solar panels
censoring
on our homes.
any videos or anyone that's talking out against climate change.
And giving communities
That's right.
cancer is okay if an oil company can post a Q1 profit. And we're here to say no more. What we are fighting against is a logic that says it is okay to pay someone less than they need to live. And we are here to say no more. And what we are also fighting against is a logic that says we can extract enough off
You know,
of
many of
human
these
life
coal
and
miners
our
and people
environmental
working in these
resources
industries
to the
that they want to
point of
destroy
destroying
are
our own
already making
humanity
more than
just
$15 an hour. But they're going to destroy those jobs. And then when everyone's forced to work minimum wage jobs, then these guys want to say, oh, let's force all these mom and pops to pay people $15 an hour they can't afford.
all of our fears. And while I'm not here to bring you comfort, what I am here to do is point to the possibility of our future. And if we act in that possibility, every day that we act in that possibility, we will have hope. And that is where hope will come from. Hope will come from our ability to act. Hope will come from our small actions.
See, they have all these ideas and this utopia ideology, but they don't think past what the next steps are. Just like with the $15 minimum wage. They don't think that that's going to cause the business owner to raise the price of goods so that at the end of the day, the $15 goes about the same distance as the minimum wage did before. They don't think these things through. But these are the people who should be leading our country.
Until recently, the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And the idea that if we continue on that logic, that we will somehow win after years and years of losing is the definition of insanity. We cannot allow ourselves to be bullied out of our values anymore.
I think the Green New Deal is the definition of insanity.
We do not have to be scared by demanding a living wage, by demanding health care for all people as we transition to an economy
How are
that
you
is
going to pay for it,
decarbonized,
AOC?
sustainable,
How are you
and
going to
just
pay
for
for
every
it?
American.
How are you going to pay for free health care for anyone and everyone when you're just going to kill a bunch of industry and jobs? Those people are no longer going to be taxpayers. They're going to be in the unemployment line. How are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it when you no longer have car manufacturers in the U.S. because you can't make cars here because of fossil fuels?
People will vote for this. People won't vote for that. The turnout for the 2018 midterm primary was
What effect is that going to have on
19%.
truck drivers? You ban fossil fuels, you're going to have a bunch of truck drivers out of work, aren't you?
Possible. But here's another
This is
statistic.
ridiculous.
In New York's 14th congressional district, in that primary, we expanded the electorate by 68% over the last off-year midterm election.
No, AOC. The Green New Deal is the definition of insanity.
There is something worth voting for. And a Green New Deal is exactly what that is. Thank you all so much. Let's organize together. Don't settle for less. And we are going to march to this future together. Thank you very much.
Well, I agree with only one thing AOC said, and that is people will vote if there's something worth voting for. I think there's something worth voting for, and that is voting against the Green New Deal. I think voting against these politicians that want to destroy America as we know it, that's worth voting for. So there we have it. That's the end of this lecture. I've had enough of this. It's given me a migraine, headache listening to all these crazy people pushing absolute hoaxes and propaganda. But the bottom line is this, guys. Thank you so much for joining me in this stream and watching this. I know it might not be fun to watch these crazy leftists, but you need to realize their numbers are amassing. They're growing in power. They've got billions of dollars in money being donated to their movements because you have big green corporations that are getting our taxpayer subsidies to fuel them to then fuel into these movements. So these movements are going to be something we have to deal with. We have to reckon with this. We need to combat this. This is something we can't ignore because before we know it, these young people are going to destroy America as we know it. They're going to destroy our freedoms, and I'm not okay with that. I don't know about you, but I'm not okay with that. So I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to do the most I can, while I still have a voice on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and all of these platforms. But I need you to go to InfoWarsStore.com and support our operation. We have been hit so hard by the censorship. We've been hit hard by these corporations, which I believe is our punishment for, essentially making it so Hillary Clinton didn't win in 2016 by exposing all of her criminal antics and the truth behind the liberals and the Democrat Party. So please go to InfoWarsStore.com. Support our operation, support us so we can continue to make good content for you guys and expose the ludicrousness, the insanity, the liberalism behind these crazy Democrats. Because liberalism is a mental disorder, in my opinion. I mean, it's made itself pretty clear here. So thank you so much for palling along with me, guys. That concludes our broadcast for today.